Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Henry here, and welcome to another video. This is the most frequently I've posted here. I'm with Risto, and if you know him, you are here in the corner. That was a bad intro. Anyway, we were on an estuary pre-recorded with Neal about a week ago now, and less than that, I suppose, at the time of recording. It was on Friday. It was almost
Yep.
a week. We talked about friendship, and I really enjoyed the direction of the conversation, and I really liked Risto's pitch specifically, and I didn't feel initially we got to even scratch the surface of some of what was covered, was brought up. Friendship is a really broad topic, to say the least, and there's so many different ways you can go, and with a limited time and with many people that were in the panel, the depth and the breadth by which you wish to go is almost inevitably never going to happen. But I think it was a really good opener for me to reach out and to get this set up, which is really exciting. So I don't know if you want to say something, introduce yourself because you're in kind of new territory on my channel.
Yeah. Yeah. We hadn't talked much like face to face
Hmm.
before that one, but we've talked a lot in back channels. So that was cool. And then you're right. It's a topic that's we could probably talk about for years. The corner could start focusing on friendship and then be there for a decade probably.
Yeah.
Um, and I really enjoyed listening to your conversation with your best friend. So I would recommend everyone check that out.
I posted the HD audio remaster, courtesy of you, actually, on there. So there's two different ways you can view it and listen to it. That was a lot of fun. That was a really good conversation. I'm sure stuff from that will come up here too. Um, but perhaps maybe I'll start. What I found most compelling, I think, about where the conversation I thought could have gone last week with the estuary was your pitch, and I had the gist of it written down initially. So maybe we can start there, unless you feel you can take it somewhere else.
That
Your
sounds
pitch
good.
was, as you said, was a saint is a friend of God, and friendships are how we become saints. So then your ultimate question, if I remember it correctly, was like, how do we then make friends become friends in more intentional ways, rather than kind of letting happenstance per se dictate such things.
Yep, that sounds right. So I guess my question for you is like what about that intrigued you? Why did that hook you? What did you want to talk about more about that?
I guess the sainthood thing is really what stuck with me. I guess I've been thinking a lot about being saint-like. We are all saints in the church, um, especially if we like to sling that word in the Protestant tradition, especially. It's a little bit more close to the chest elsewhere, but that's all right. Uh, but I like that idea. I've been thinking a lot about that, and somewhat in tandem too with some maybe like noble ideas of chivalry, because I'm reading a lot of King Arthur stuff, and so I think like virtue, being virtuous, saint like, all of that has just been in my mind for a myriad of reasons, and it's very hard to do. It's very hard to be that. It's easy to expound upon such virtues or sentiments, and then actually putting it into practice is rough. But I really like the idea that friends are a conduit by which such things come about, even in part.
Yeah, yeah, or that it should be coming about, like if that's not happening, we have a problem.
Mhm.
Something's off. Um, it's easy to think about like saints. I mean, saints, I think that's one of their primary things is to inspire us to like Paul says, follow my examples. I follow the example of Christ. So then you come upon these people, in history. It's like Francis of Assisi or Hudson Taylor or Rich Mullins or whoever. Like you come across this person and you're like, their example is inspires me, but which is good, as it should. But a friend is something. It's one thing to like read about some cool, amazing story. It's another thing like to have it happen to you. And so like a friend is just like one layer closer. It's like I said, it's one thing to like hear about Francis of Assisi's life. It's another thing to like see my friend Luke and see like how God's changing him and how holiness is being worked in his life.
Yeah.
Because I don't know Francis of Assisi.
Right. Right, it's that idea too. They're role models, they're aspirational figures. But to have somebody who could be just as much of a role model and aspiration, whether or not consciously, because I don't think by any means I would say that about any of my friends necessarily. I wouldn't say like I look up to you by any stretch, but
Right.
there's going to be an inevitable rubbing off on one another in some way, or there will be traits or dispositions or attitudes or sentiments. These are all synonyms, I guess. That you probably will find admirable and want to adopt or take on, or vice versa. There's things that I've observed with my friends where I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I've seen a lot of non-examples just as much as I've seen positive examples from the company I keep, the friends that I have, of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Um, like a couple examples that come to my mind. One in the corner is Neal,
Mhm.
and we've chatted before, and I won't break his confidence, but he's. I think one time he mentioned he'd gone through some dark days, and I felt like my days are sometimes dark. So I reached out to Neal. I was like, "Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about that, just privately?" And so he did, and then one thing he mentioned, and he has said this publicly, so I feel like I can share this, but he said that he weekly goes to a prayer chapel. Um, at his Catholic church, they have I forget what it's called. There's
Adoration?
adoration. That's it. Yep. And so he'll go to that prayer chapel. It's like a quiet place where he can kind of take stock of things weekly. And so I started kind of like following his habit a little bit. Now I've been out of habit for a while, but so there's been many Fridays where you find me at a Catholic church, at their prayer chapel as a Protestant, taking stock and inventory a bit. Um, and that's not always easy, but that really encouraged me, his practice. I was like, oh, okay, I can follow Neil's example in that. Um, so that's just like one practical thing in the corner, like with a
Yeah.
friend in the corner that I think is good. And one more from the corner. This is um I had is it Jeff P who's reading through all of C.S. Lewis's stuff on
I don't
his
know.
channel. I think he's reading through everything, but I'd listened to his rando with PVK,
Mhm.
and he mentioned that he's writing out the whole Bible as well. Just
Wow.
like every word, chapter by chapter. So I thought his story was cool. I had my wife listen to it. She's not in the corner. She doesn't really care
Yeah.
about the corner stuff that much. But after listening to his story, she started to write out the Bible. So, and it's been interesting, like I have noticed a little bit of a change in her uh as she's been going through that process. So I think she just finished the book of Genesis. Um
That's really cool. Is this for memory purposes? Is like for retention of like what's presented there, or is it just
I think just to slow down, I think it slows you down,
yeah.
and you instead of just, like, reading through it super fast. So she's even mentioned that, like, stuff is sticking out to her in ways that it hadn't before.
Okay, this is cool. I might I might have to try this too. All right. That's really neat. So
Yeah,
that's really cool. Um, I really French I think one of the other things about friendship, kind of to this point, or maybe to spring off of it, and this is the case with anybody, any relationship you're in, family's a little bit different because you come from kind of a pre-established space. But anytime you're in foreign territory, essentially, every time you encounter a friend or their circles and stuff. And so there's a I mean, there's a lot of excitement and mystery, but like with that unknown territory, there's going to be these very foreign, maybe seeming practices to you, like writing out, a chapter or like a book of the Bible for just slowing yourself down, or for finding a new routine or practice like attending adoration, just, not being in the Catholic faith. but I think that's one of the benefits. That's a fruit of a friendship. Again, one that I don't know in certain spaces is always conscious, right? Sometimes there's an intentional adoption of those things. Um, but I think the beauty of friendship, like even with that, even if like, oh, that's cool, let me try that out. It's not me then being conscious, like, well, I'm gonna be a friend and pick up this practice. It's a very natural uh mode. One of the things C.S. Lewis talks about, I have the Four Loves with me. I
Oh,
brought it just in
nice.
case it's gonna
Yeah.
come up. Is that you can't force friendship is one of the ideas, and he says that I think he calls the most pathetic individuals are those who are desperately seeking friends, no, and they are the ones who cannot make them, because they are trying too hard, maybe per se, for lack of a better word, to do so. And there are those individuals, and you can encounter them. But yeah, I guess I'm just kind of taking it to the natural kind of evolution or adoption for friendship, and allowing it naturally to occur creates unlikely friendships, and then I guess unlikely sainthood, if you want to say that. Like my best friend Christian is significantly older than I am, and I've always had a tendency to hang out with people older than I am for a myriad of reasons. And I prefer the company of people older than I am for old soul, etc. Um, but like I probably on my own, I remember meeting him a first time around a couple months before we'd actually been formally acquainted, and I would never have thought to have approached the guy for anything at the time. Partly he wasn't show his personality hadn't come out at the moment. It was in a group space, but that in to the credit or to the point of like the IRL space forcing you to become friends with individuals, right, rather than being selective. Like that was an unlikely friendship insofar as maybe initial appearances. Obviously, we just immediately clicked, but I was just thinking about that. The uh man, I'm losing my ability to articulate. It's just it's remarkable. It's almost miraculous in some spaces, like in not allowing to be selective about it, and then again naturally letting these things kind of occur.
Yeah. It's like any good story. It's like
Hmm.
the how it unfolds is unexpected. And friendship, it definitely is like that. Like a couple of my best friends, like my brother's one of my best friends. Uh, I don't know if that's unexpected or not. I don't know how often that happens with brothers. I'm thankful for it.
I'm
Um,
envious of that.
yeah, I don't think it happens all the time. And sometimes it's difficult, you know. It does take working through stuff, but it's awesome. Um, One of my other really good friends, you know, who I'd consider a best friend, I met him at church camp, and I was like a total nerd, and he was in the group of kids that always got sent home from camp early for like smoking or
Yeah.
making out with your girlfriend when you shouldn't be, or and then I think my friend like had like a Motley Crue t-shirt, and I'm like, that's not good, you know, that's I would I was the nerdy self-righteous kid. Um, but somehow we got put in the same cabin and then just like connected. You know, there was
Yeah.
those things like it was the whole C.S. Lewis U2 thing, you know, like
Yes.
we shared a similar
Shared
sense of
vision.
humor. Yeah. And then just life circumstances that friendship ended up developing. And both of us like got serious about our faith or became Christians kind of around the same time. And so then after that, then it just sparked a lifelong friendship. We were best men in each other's weddings, and
Oh man.
you, you know, we still keep in contact regularly. Um, so yeah, it definitely. I think sometimes it could happen intentionally for people, but oftentimes it just springs like out of nowhere
Yeah.
unexpectedly.
Yeah. I kind of have the same sentiment. Like the idea, like it springs naturally, and then it comes from like individuals that you're like, I wouldn't want to hang out with normally. I don't know if you've ever been able to step back from your friends and be like, it's almost a wonder why we're friends at times, just based
Mm.
on personality or demeanor and stuff. I've got another friend who is the most principled man I know, most principled man I know. and it's really admirable. And I cannot say that I'm the same way insofar as sticking to his guns on. He's very hard lined about a lot of things. He's not high in openness insofar as accepting different ideas and exploring whether they're correct or not. He's like, no, this is how it is. You're like, all right, cool. I appreciate that. But that's sometimes the most insufferable thing
Mm,
imaginable as well. And I think one of the things that helps make one another saints is you become, Storge enters the mix and you become almost too familiar with your
mm.
friends at times. And I think that might be the difference between like real friends and acquaintances too. Like acquaintances, there's that politeness, if we want to use Neal's word from the estuary, right? That might be the not the antithesis to friendship, certainly, but it is an inhibitor, perhaps. But without becoming so familiar that your friends get on your nerves for whatever idiosyncrasies or social cues or regular behaviors they have. Like I feel like if you don't have that with your friends, you're probably not growing with one another very well, and you're probably not actually as close as you might want to believe you to be. And then, like, maybe conversely, another non-example of friends is like if you just are irritable with like an acquaintance or like a social, like that's just a social issue, and just you're not clicking, whether it's like a forced function or whatever. Like I think there's a difference there, but
Yeah, the word honesty like pops into my head.
hmm
Um, talk about becoming holy. I see a lot of holiness happen in like 12-step programs. Like people hit rock bottom.
hmm
And I think a lot of maybe what happens is they're forced to be honest. Like when you've screwed up royally, then you're forced to be honest. And then that's like the point where God can meet you and be like, okay, now are you done with your way? Like you thought you were the shit, but now you're willing to listen to me.
yeah,
And, repentance is all about that. So, but friendship also has that like really important element of we're going to be honest with each other. Even if you're two scoundrels, you probably are honest about your scoundrelhood with each other.
yes, yeah. Lewis says that friendship is a neutral idea, right? It's he would say it's like under the angels, but you can
Mm.
have good friendships, you can have bad friendships, right? Our most wicked political leaders of the 20th century were friends. They got real chummy with one another, and we have we have the Axis powers, right? They're friends per se by some term. And then you can also say that even on the smaller scale, it's extreme, right? You have, and I've seen it in school, both with like older kids and like younger kids. You have that group of friends of like boys or specifically where you're just like, they're not up to any good. There's no good to be had with these individuals at all. And perhaps even in those there is that honesty in kind of that behavior, or maybe a different thought, right? On the one hand, you can be sanctified by your friends and their social ticks and cues and things that bother you with one another. On the other hand, right, you could be uh made a total monster by your friends, right? Depending on the company you keep.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of Psalm 1, right? Like Psalm 1
hmm
kind of talks about that company you keep and how that can corrupt you. Yeah, so I think it is like the opposite. That makes sense that it's neutral and it could be bad or good. Um, I don't I don't think we pay attention to our friends close enough. I don't think we put enough I know I don't, but I don't think we put enough intention into those relationships, into cultivating them. And then I think we also don't pay attention to what they can teach us. I say that because one of my best friends died recently and it was unexpected. And so I've been reflecting on that, and it's interesting because he had a really good heart, and he did a lot of things as a father, as a husband, as a dude. Like I saw him grow over the years. And his wife said like that his past year was like one of the best years of his life. He got fit, he was overweight most of the years I knew him, but he got fit for his family. He was involved with his church, serving people. Like all the stories came out afterwards of like him encouraging people. And he wasn't perfect. He struggled with stuff. He would have
Mhm.
panic attacks. Um, but he was like learning more and more to like trust God with that stuff and walk out his faith in fear and trembling. And so, but with his death, it forced everyone around him to focus and look at that in a way that you wouldn't if he was like 90 or 95 years old.
Yeah.
Um, when everyone else is, when someone's old,
Sure.
you can reflect back and say they lived a good life, but I don't think you focus quite as much. Um,
Mm-mm.
So, but we don't have to have our friends die to be able to stop and reflect on their life and focus on their lives. Sometimes I think we maybe focus on like an athlete more than we would our friend. We know all these little things about like a celebrity or an athlete, but our friends have a ton to offer us and challenge us, and we could take from their example, um, to say like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I should follow their example."
That's a almost a pro felicity thing too, of like for insofar as I like that idea, paying attention to the now. One, I would ask how much of that is also because of the way, I guess, life and its priorities at certain stages of life are, organized. Like, right now, and I kinda talked about it in the estuary, my rearrangement of, like, the loves and, like, the way I'm experiencing the loves has been completely reorganized, and so it's like Storge and Aros are now at the top because I'm with my family and I'm in a new relationship romantically. Like, those are now far more prevalent than philia. Friendship has been and was for 6 something years. Let me close the door before the dogs bark and come back in here, bark to herald my call or whatever, need me for their help. I just knew where that was going. It was not gonna go in the way I wanted it to go. The There's a little dog and he'll, see just whatever outside and get really territorial. He's the most scaredy dog ever. He's not really,
Was he
but then he
barking?
triggers the bigger dog. I heard one of them barking. I heard
Okay,
it.
I couldn't hear it, yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. I was just like, "Ugh, we can't do this." Anyway, um, I was talking about priorities, and so consistently, right, through probably the majority of Americans, the West's life, the domains that exist the most is like the domain of the home, domain of the work, and probably in that order, if not swapped. And philia, friendship, doesn't necessarily exist in those spaces and is not going to be found or be prevalent in them. And so that takes third, fourth, I guess, precedence, or what's the word? Prevalence in like in the hierarchy, right? And so that's interesting. And I think that might be part of that. We don't stop and reflect on such things. It's just because of the encounters and where they persist. Because like for a good 3 years, I lived kind of in the world of friendship. 3 4 years, like for real. That was about the time my friends showed up and we got established. We became a group, and others came into it, and that was my primary source of love for a long time. And so I'm very much right now feeling like, oh, I miss my friend. So my friend Christian plays trading cards and or like card games, and we did that all together. Like, and I miss him, like hanging out with him, and we're going to stores and like buying packs and ripping them open and getting like the cool rare cards. And like I miss that a lot. I miss my other friends. He's working on some Bible resources, and I miss seeing him and him being really excited to show me all the projects he's working on. And so like those are those small things. And yeah, I was gonna tie it to the Profilicity thing. For whatever reason, we're so fascinated and want to be acquainted with high profile individuals or become the high profile individuals. But to your point of like what value does a high profile individual really provide? I've asked that question to Neal before. Um, months ago, but what value do they actually provide? Because you're not interacting with them, because they are in some way a persona before they're an individual, or somebody you never even encounter. Like if you get the chance to encounter them, like how much value is it actually going to provide beyond perhaps this almost, I've said it before, idolatrous kind of experience? Conversely, right, like your friend who's passed, or your friend now who you keep in touch, from your Bible camp days, like there's so much more access. You have so much more access to them. I have so much more access to my friends that whatever you might be seeking per se in the high profile individual, whatever it is, athlete, celebrity, might actually be found in them, and that everybody has, this is a different train of thought, but everybody technically might have certain traits or aspects that might be essential to high profilicity or like celebrity status. It's just that you're not one.
Yeah, and let's say you became a friend with someone who is high profile.
Yeah.
The friendship flattens that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just
Yes.
I'm becoming friends with C.S. Lewis. I'm reading through his biographies, different biographies, and learning about him and his friends and his life. But there was like one anecdote I just heard recently where, because he kind of sometimes crossed paths with people like that were higher status than him, in Oxford. And one of his friends was talking about that there was Lord so and so, I can't remember who it was, and he was like writing to his wife, and he's like, "I think I became friends with this guy. I referred to him by his first name," like so. There's
Yeah.
something about like that as the friendship develops. A real friend, you can't actually be friends and have that
Mm-mm.
difference. You have to be on a first name basis. You have to become vulnerable. Um, you know, like we tend to think of like, or at least in some circles, of venerating saints. And with my friend's death, I have been venerating him. But also if we got together, you know, um, I would just be friends with him. I just hang out. And
Yeah.
I've heard some writings from some saints who have passed, who are venerated in different churches. I'm always struck by how the writings seem so down to earth and relatable. It's like, oh, this person, like we think of them of like, oh, the light shining down, and they have an icon made of them and they're just amazing. But you read their writings and you're like, oh, I can relate to who that person is. And that's probably how it has to be. Like, I don't think you could actually become a saint without being honest and realizing your faults and your shortcomings.
Yeah.
They would probably be the first to point that out.
It's really good. On that idea too of like, you can't be friends with somebody if you're not on the same playing field either. Like it has to be level ground in terms of how you're perceived. Lewis says, I'm not going to try and flip through the page, it'll take too long, right? But friendship sees no class, no race, no social status, none of
Mm,
those things. That's everything is actually quite inconsequential. And Lewis also says that's also why when guys specifically will get together, right, and hang out and they're friends, nothing of substance that would be of concern to perhaps the wife, the missus, is ever brought up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you're married. It doesn't matter that you have this job. It doesn't matter that, you know, you did this trip or was this sport thing. Whatever matters is whatever is that which binds the friends together.
mm.
And I think that's
And
really cool.
yeah, and that's probably especially true for male friendships. It may be
Yeah.
different for female friendships.
I can't speak to that. I tried asking my girlfriend about like
Yeah.
girl friendships, and I was like, I got
I
an
th-
answer, but I was like, okay, I kind of needed elaboration, but
I think it is different. I would probably bet that it is different, just observing my wife and her friends over the years.
yeah,
Um, and that's okay, that's the beauty of the difference between men and women.
yeah.
Um,
We're only here to talk about guy friendships.
right.
I'm not gonna try and speak on girl friendships.
Yeah.
I have no, I have no grounds for that. Um, I was gonna go somewhere with that. No, Saints. Um, Oh, it was another profile thing. Um, kind of connected. Uh, One of my favorite music artists, I ended up getting to meet her and talk about like the ground getting flattened and seeing kind of the individual at face value for who they are, stripped away even from like the profilicity, uh, is a really good come down in a lot of respects. And um, she was on a podcast with one of her bandmates, and they were talking about kind of their relationship as friends because they're like in a ministry, like a worship band together. And but the crux of it was talking about one of her songs called Best Friend. This is Jess Ray. It's off of her like one of her albums from probably 5 years ago now, 4 years ago. And it's talking about friendship with God. And they had a really kind of good way about talking about the nature of friendship with God, which maybe we can kind of blend that in, as I feel like I'm just kind of disjointedly tying things together, figuring out. It's so broad. It's really hard to talk
Yeah.
about all this cohesively. It's anyway, they had a really good point, and I'll start here just because I was re-listening to this podcast that they had, and then maybe work maybe to my pitch question of the time and something I want to throw it to you connect to this. They were talking about friendship with God and like the thing that kept them in the faith, and they're older, and they probably were kind of going like around in the new atheist movement, the seeker, not the seeker movement, but the other one. No, it was the seekers, like the 90s and 2000s.
Emergent church.
The emergence church was happening at the time. All of that was kind of coexisting at the time that they were going in through the church. And they said that the one thing that kept them in the faith that they persisted in was not the beliefs or precepts or etc., right? That one might consider to bind you within the church or within the faith, but it is friendship with God. And they were talking about being distant from him. And they said, if you're returning to God, like if he is your friend, it might be just like your friends in real life, and just coming back to them, and your friend probably just appreciates you reaching out after a long time in distance. And so I guess I just wanted to springboard that to the idea of friendship with God or friendship with Jesus, and trying to maybe see where that we can connect that to the friendship, like saints and friendship, or becoming saints with your friends, and trying to kind of throw that into the pool of conversation too. Like when Jesus says, the servant knows not the will of the master, right? But you are no longer servants, and I call you friends, and you know my will. If you are my friends, right, you will keep my commandments, you will do these things. And that's kind of all he says as to, his disciples being friends. And then we have a rich history and tradition of hymns and uh, preachers speaking on friendship with Jesus. I think of What a Friend We Have in Jesus, like that hymn, singing that in church often. But I really struggle with that idea insofar as what that looks like and how that works beyond conceptually, beyond like the concept of it. Like I get it,
Right.
and I would say like if you are friends with Jesus, you have a shared vision as he does. We want to use the Lewis kind of idea of philia, but that's about all I got.
Well, it's interesting to the connection to the flattening of the relationship because Jesus is saying that there, right?
Yeah.
At that conceptual level,
Yeah.
he's flattening it. But I struggle with that same thing. Even that relationship of us to God as Father, Jesus is constantly trying to clarify that. Like, what kind of dad, if his kid asks him for a good thing, is going to give his kid a bad thing, or
Right.
the prodigal son where you think as a prodigal you're coming back, like I can only really come back as a servant. This is
If I do
interesting
X,
that
Y,
there's that
Z.
servant again. Yeah, but then the father comes running out. Um, I more relate to the prodigal's kind of son's mindset of like, well, maybe I'll just hang out in this pig pen for a while. If I ever go home, the best it could be is as a servant. Um, I think that's a good. I think that's a good reminder what you just said of like, well, is God better or worse than my best friend?
Right.
You know, and if I totally hose things up with my best friend, how's he going to act? is he going to be like glad that I reached out to him if I haven't in a while?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's easy to get stuff all screwed up in our head as to how things are um, with our friendship with God.
I guess a question I'd ask to that is where in our friendship with Jesus are or where in our friendships with our friends here, where is that reflected in our friendship with Jesus? I think that might be the better way to phrase that. Like the other day, I reconnected with a friend. I met him in youth group. Used to drive him, like chauffeur him over because he couldn't drive at the time, and then eventually we just became friends and hang out. And I don't talk to him and text him very much, but as soon as we're back together, we just pick up like it's nothing and like jump right back and meet up at this biker bar somehow to get food and yucking it up. And my lips get a little bit loose with him, and we make certain jokes. And I'm like, I would not be doing that with Jesus, I guess, but there's got to be something in the friendship or in the relationships that I have that you have, right? That are pale imitations of what we can have with Jesus. And I don't know what that looks like or how you can even what's the word? Do that? Because then there's also that reverend like status thing of like Christ as Savior and Lord, right? Part of the Trinity. And then you're also oftentimes people like will you interact with the Father too. You're like, all right, well, I'm me and I'm like a worm. I don't know how I can be on any kind of flattened playing field with the Messiah. Like there's that too that I think is a barrier to like understanding friendship with Jesus beyond the conceptual.
Yeah,
I hope I'm making sense.
no, it makes sense. It's like a tension there. It's like
Hmm.
a I think at the conceptual, maybe that's a little bit where we get lost is when we're living only in the conceptual theological realm,
Hmm.
you know. Uh Whereas I think experientially, you see this with people like one example is what's one of the dudes who's on the Mr. Beast crew like reconnected with Jesus recently. Chandler.
Okay.
You know, you see people that like have had this radical experience with God and like a newly rekindled faith or a new entirely new faith. And there is like Jesus is Lord for them, but also like very close and intimate. It's like kind of like a both at the same time sort of thing. I don't
Yeah,
know like how you make sense of that conceptually, like in your theology,
sure.
um, but
And
you see it play out.
we can put the theology and like the systematic side of it like aside. Like that's not what I'm concerned about with this idea
Yeah.
either. Like how is it? I guess it is. Like how does it get lived out that you can be friends with him?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, I think that happens experientially, kind of spiritually.
Hmm.
Um, I think it doesn't really happen in the theological level. Like, it requires just that whatever that mystical connection is that happens. Um, and so maybe we kind of get off track in our thinking when that's not happening, when it's a dark night of the soul or we've wandered
Hmm.
away, you know, then we start to get all kinds of thoughts about things, and maybe some of those thoughts are off.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna try.
as far as
Oh,
cultivating that, that's a good
yeah,
question.
yeah.
I'm not sure, like practically, how do you cultivate that?
Let me
Is it
try my hand at like something. Like
Yeah.
I got going. Because some of the I think about prayer too of like you know, we pray to the Father though, if normally, right? If we're looking kind of just the way we normally do it.
Mhm.
But if friendship is shared vision, shared tasks, shared objectives, usually a lot of male friendships specifically, right, are bound or created by some sort of shared objective or goal, whether it's a church project, if we wanted to use that, or going to a card shop and finding out there's more than just the card shop that you find interesting together, right? Or playing games. but there's a work to be done, right? And you share in the work of Christ in a very real way through the Great Commission, through, I guess, obedience of his commandments, right? If Christ was perfect, therefore you should be too, or strive for that. That would be another objective that is shared. And so, and there's theological words I guess you'd use for this, but I guess like friendship with Jesus is probably a lot less the way that I converse with my friends and more adopting the way Christ would spend his time or the way he would converse with others. Like you're much like in the way we adopt certain behaviors or tasks from our friends now, whether it is like the writing out the Bible thing or my hobbies are influenced by my friends and vice versa. There probably should be a lot more a lot more adopting the hobbies, quote unquote hobbies or interest of Jesus more than anything. And so friendship, I suppose, is probably like it's relational, obviously, but it's not relational, I think, in the way that at least us and definitely us in the TLC probably don't like or like to do that. Like there's probably less of the thinky talky. There's a lot more doing, it seems like. Just me spitballing and try to think like not a theologian, but
Yeah.
10 years of this. Let me at least try to actually answer this question.
Yeah. So would you say like we might find Jesus where like if you had a friend who is really interested in playing a card game
Hmm.
or you wanted to find a new friend who's
Hmm.
really interested in this certain card game or pickleball or whatever. Like you might need to go down to the courts.
Yeah.
You might need to go to the card shop. You might need to join whatever online group if you want to find that friend. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're saying is like if we like maybe we can that friendship can be kindled or find it or grow it in aligning our priorities with Jesus's?
Kind of, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because Jesus kind of finds you, not kind of, he does. And then from there, it's almost like he deems you a friend.
Hmm.
And so it's not, I'm trying to make, so then when he chooses you as a friend, you're like, okay, we're friends now. So what do you like to do?
Hmm. Mhm.
And it's not one sided. Because obviously you're not, obviously you're not going to play a card game with Jesus. We're not doing that. It's not how this works. But, but there's a lot of inquiring because of the other things that he is, right? That he is a friend that you want to be like, I suppose.
Mm.
And I guess another thought I'm thinking of, if we're looking at like biblical friendships, like we don't know much about David and Jonathan's friendship other than like they loved each other and that Jonathan was a protector and keeper of David in difficult times. And so perhaps maybe to our definition, maybe that's the other thing is that our definitions of friendship and friendship as a virtue are really different now versus what it would have been deemed then too.
Mhm.
Like are we just playing off of different terms for friendship as well? Like when Jesus says that we're friends, that's maybe not actually the same way that I would call my friend Christian a friend or any of the guys in the corner as a friend. Like we might also just be playing off of 2000 to 1000 something years of different
Yeah.
language and meaning. So
Well, and there's probably quite a bit of depth in that friendship. I think you're right, like, that term often just means acquaintance.
yeah.
That's why we have best friend, you know? Like,
Hmm.
friendship can be all the way from my barista to
Yeah.
I would take your kids in if you died. I'd take your kids.
Right.
I'll take care of your family, you know? Um, it could be super close and intimate, and I imagine Jesus is using it in that way. I wonder what word he used. What's
Yeah.
the Greek word the
What is the Greek
recorders of
word?
events put in there? Um,
Yeah.
we
Huh.
should check that out.
Let me
Was it
see.
B?
I was gonna be cool and go grab my concordance, but it's in a box, and I would
Let
have
me
just
look.
opened that up. But
See, I no longer call you servants. John 15:15. Let's see. And
John 15,
I
15.
know, yeah, John 15:15.
I should know that. That's like my favorite part of John is the upper room discourse. John 16 is my favorite thing.
Okay, let me see. Then BLB. Philos.
Well, that's our philia. That's our friend or philia. Yeah. But what is the? Let me see. Seeing a different. I don't know. Strong's definition: properly dear, i.e., a friend, fond, neighbor, associate. Those are some of the words that comes up in like the Strong's definition according to the Greek, which I don't
Hmm.
know if is super helpful because then well, if it's neighbor, love thy neighbor. How do you love your neighbor? You love your neighbor as yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because neighbor carries that's a lot of weight, right? When you say neighbor
Yeah.
in the biblical sense.
Yes. Yeah. Not in today's sense by any means, but yeah, if
Yeah.
that comes from that in some way, or it is even like remotely associated with it.
Hmm.
Oh, the other thing of like adopting what Jesus does is like in the idea that your friends can be role models or that you have a shared vision or goal. We talk about the shared sufferings of Christ, right? Christ is our great sympathizer and suffers alongside us when we do so as well. Um, I would say that's very much a mark of friendship is long suffering with one another. And so it's just on our end to be very conscious that Christ does suffer with us.
Hmm.
Because the issue is probably less I don't know how to be a friend to Jesus. It's like it's not that Jesus doesn't know how to be a friend to us. We just don't know how to perceive him as friend. Right? I guess maybe that's the question is how do we perceive him and by what metrics is friendship friend or even neighbor. Actually, I almost really like that idea now too of Jesus as neighbor or we're his neighbor.
Well, and maybe this is where it's helpful, right? People say you can only know God by analogy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe this is where it's really helpful to have that analogy of a friend and that it's a robust analogy that we're
Mm-hmm.
not operating as acquaintance, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where it's actually super helpful. Like becoming a father really helps me understand what a father's love is like.
Yeah.
And I can get messed up in my head as to like what God thinks about me. And then I ask that question like, well, am I a better father than God? You know, do I have more affection for my children than God would have for me or more patience for them? And it's like obviously not.
Right.
Um so so maybe this is where it's helpful to have like a robust idea of what a friendship is
Yeah.
and then to think about Jesus in that way. And a real friendship is not just it's not casual, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's deep. It's again like with my friend dying, like suddenly the idea that a friendship is whole it itself is holy. You know, a good friendship is is um has been pressed upon me to realize
Yeah.
that. Um you know, for my friend who's died, but then now for my also friends who are living, I was like, I haven't been treating those friendships as holy
Yeah.
and, you know, listening to them, what they have to say and what's important to them, what's of interest to them. Um, there's a Gerard Manley Hopkins poem called Care Haunts that no, it's not called is it called Care Haunts? No, that's a line from the poem. It's called A Lantern Out of Doors.
Okay.
And it talks about even when we can't be friends with everyone, that Jesus actually is that friend who is watching out for them, whose care haunts them, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a good that's where I think friendship with the people around us, deep friendships are probably like super important for us to think about, well, Jesus wants that kind of a relationship with me.
Yeah. That's really good. The other idea too is that um right, Jesus will be our friend to us through our friends,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Obviously God does not work out of nothing insofar as he has a world naturally, or like there's the natural world by which he works in and operates in the events and stuff, and you see his hand in those things as opposed to just seeing like his hand. We don't have that. And so to that idea, right, we see Christ in others who are friends with him, and then we exhibit Christ because we're friends with him too.
Yep. Yeah, Lewis definitely hits on that point. In Mere Christianity, I think I remember we read it this
Probably.
past year, our family, and I remember coming away with the idea that like God works in our life through church being like those other people who are on the way, want to be on the way together, and it's like this machinery that God uses to work in our life.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty good. I think there's a better definition now of this, more or less.
yeah, yeah, we scratched the surface a little bit.
Yeah, practically is still there's things to be had there. I
Yeah,
think that honesty and transparency we brought up before uh exists, but we're the ones that need to be honest and transparent, right? Christ lays himself out before us. He's kind of a mystery too, but that's a different discussion. But it's kind of up to us to be continually open and transparent with him, right? If we want to
but I think
maintain that depth.
but I think realizing his affection towards us, his whatever the Greek word is, philos,
Philos, yeah.
yeah, that helps us to be open and transparent.
Yeah.
Kind of the definition of an enemy in a way is someone that you are closed off to.
Hmm.
Like even physically, you might wear armor.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right.
so if you forget that God loves you as a father, that Jesus loves you as a friend, you can. I think I know I've done this. I can close myself off to Him
Yeah.
instead of being more open. Like a friend, you can tell your shit to
Hmm.
and know that they want what's best for you. They might tell you something really difficult, right? They might say like, "You got to get together, dude." Um,
Yeah.
but you can trust that they're doing that because they're not judging you. They just want good outcomes for you. And it's
Yeah.
easy. I know for me it's just like easy to forget that perspective.
Yeah. That's really good. Got a friend on that idea of like what's best for you. He's done it a lot and for the better when others wouldn't. Of like, I'm gonna tell you how it is and tell you
Yeah.
how you're acting and tell you what's gonna happen if you don't if you don't shape up. He's done that a
Yeah.
lot for me.
Yeah.
Um, I really appreciate that, and I that's part of that trust too with a friend that you like when they do that, as painful as it might be. If you receive it right, you should be able to take it. You should be able to like humbly accept that the truth from them, like from Christ too. Like he's gonna do that as well, right? At times, and
But
often
if
maybe sometimes right after you've
yeah.
talked the stuff with him, right?
Yeah.
He shows you affection, and then is like, yeah, okay, this is how it is, you know?
But they'll walk with you, right? They're not
Yeah.
just gonna
Hmm.
a friend doesn't just like tell you like, okay, here's where you're screwed up. Like friendship is to actually walk with you in that.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah. I uh I had an idea about the corner.
Yeah.
Um, the importance of randos.
Mhm.
I think one important part of that is I think it serves the purpose of flattening relationships.
Yeah.
Um, because if you hear someone's story and they're being honest about it, it it makes them more like you're not coming to know them through their profile.
Yeah.
And so then it does pave the way uh for actually starting friendships with people. You see them on a friendly level.
Yes. I have that, uh, to that idea, maybe like a real life example, in 2 ways. I don't know how relevant it is. I used to be in the Lego world a lot. That was my hobby, and it's decreased significantly, but I used to go to convention scenes in the area, and if you don't know, for those of you who don't know, Florida is like the Lego influencer capital,
Mm.
or like the South is, like Florida, Texas, some of that, and some of these, like, conventions will sign on some of these big influencer people, into these, to these shows, and, this is not about becoming friends with influencers, actually, this is quite the opposite, but it's about those instead in the other space, which is contrary to what the corner does. These profiles come in and they do their profile thing and interact with the crowd as a profile. And I remember initially being like, well, it'd be interesting to like pick their brain and figure out what they like and stuff. And very quickly you discover it's very much a business and it very much is their job. And that's not fun or interesting to engage with those individuals. Right. Conversely, all the randos for the local shows that show up from the area are the coolest people and the best people to hang out with. Some of them get on my nerves, but that's a different thing. Right, but coming to know those guys is really neat, um, and they're, provide something super neat, but, like, but that's the avenue for, like, other for friendship that exists outside of that hobby and space. That's a little bit different, because in a space like that too, or in real world settings, like, becoming friends, which we could maybe talk about that too, of, like, what is it that binds the friends together? And is that if that's taken away, can that persist or is that sustainable? So most of the guys that I know from these circles, they're really cool and they're really neat, but I don't know them beyond the hobby. And so they're not friends in any neighborly way in like the way like Jesus would be or Christian my friend Christian would be or any of the other guys. Um So then, like, I guess that would be right, another question. We could tie it back to like the corner too, is like, is that which binds the randos and binds us as like initially randos and then like friends here in the corner, if that which is what brought us together removed, does it hold after that, like conceptually? Or is TLC a space because it's so abstract and it is already inherently about life and doing life? I guess I think TLC is about doing life together, but if it is about that, is that enough then to sustain the friendship? Or if you come into it for the, I don't know, debate stuff. We don't debate, but you know what I mean? Like, is that what you're coming into the space, TLC wise, outside wise, you become friends with an individual. Is that enough to bind you beyond that which you came into it initially?
Well, I mean, I think the deepest level where you're bound is as much as that you're gonna stay together. So you might come together initially for something that's at a not as a deep of a level, more surface
Hmm.
level, right? But but then the more you build at a deeper level, like a higher meaning, um, and more honesty and like regularity, like all those things that build a friendship, you know. Like I wrote a few words down here. If you want to build a friendship, let's say you meet someone, there's that little spark, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think then it just requires like attention, honesty, uh, openness, which is part of honesty,
Yeah.
regularity. Like it requires those things to then start building it. So then I think once you've built that, I mean, people say this about friends, like, even if you haven't seen a really good friend for 20 years and you get back together, it's almost like you had never spent a day apart.
Yeah.
So and I think some of that can happen in the corner. Probably mostly that happens behind the scenes,
Yep.
not so much on streams. The streams are like the where it could start, um,
Mhm.
those friendships. But from what I've seen, I think people do start to build friendships in the corner. Um, and so I think the randos, it probably would happen no matter what, but the randos kind of sets that. It's really helpful. I mean, you've been in a lot of church circumstances before where it's super help if you want the people around you to be open and honest, which is a necessity for friendship, then someone has to set the tone for that.
Yeah.
And so randos are just like they're the thing that set the tone for that. Because it's very different than oftentimes what happens in the thinky talky, like kind of estuary style of everything,
Yeah.
where you can just be up at the idea level. Um, but the randos are like the opposite of that. Not the opposite, but they're different.
Yes. Well, that's what brought me in was the randos. That's what I enjoyed. Because of that leveling, you go, "Oh, everybody can participate? All right, I'm in. I'll play."
Yeah.
Right? Versus the estuaries, even now are kind of intimidating to get into. Not because of the profile per se, by any means, or being a profile, but because you're so above usually anything that is more grounded in the relationship or in a relationship.
Yeah. Well,
Unless the pitch is like relational or with about the relationships with each other, maybe.
yeah.
Or is personal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to be kind of interested in the pitch and then also be able to converse at whatever level that is. Oftentimes it's like, well, I
Hmm.
can't, like we want to have a discussion about the Four Loves or some other book you've read, and I haven't read the book. It's going to be difficult for us to have a
Yeah.
discussion about that.
Not to speak on the back channels by any means, but I feel like that exists in the back channels as well. Is that sometimes it gets very idea driven, what I've read, what I'm discussing, and I usually tune out and just scroll through the chat and don't read it.
Right. Right.
But if somebody's giving a
Until there's something you connect with.
right, or like somebody drops a lengthy reflection about their life, and you're like, this is exactly what I'm here for. This is what I signed up for.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So it's interesting. So like those both of those spaces exist on both the public and private spaces, right?
Yeah.
And both cultivate friendship, right?
Yeah.
Or help to do that.
And if friendship is, especially again with male friendships, they said we're more interested in things than people. But there
Yeah.
is an aspect of like that ideas and things I think are an important part of a friendship. It's not just let me bare my soul to you. We also have to talk about like um if we both pipe smoke, what shape of pipe do you like?
Yes.
Like what's your
Hmm.
technique? We gotta talk about like boring, not boring. It's not because it's not boring, it's actually exciting, but you have to talk about all that stuff that doesn't seem um nearly as deep or heavy.
Well, it's funny too. I think sometimes that with friendships, the deep, heavy stuff doesn't have to come second, but sometimes you don't want to do it because you would rather talk about the other thing that's more interesting,
Yeah.
seemingly,
Yeah.
right? Or the if like the shared goal is more exciting than the other kind of doldrums of life and things. Like sometimes you do have that.
Well, and sometimes you've been looking at the abyss of existence and its complexity, and you need a break from that.
Yeah. Hmm. And so
So,
friends are multifaceted in that way too.
yeah.
In a way that other relationships aren't. And in a way that others aren't, I would say.
Well, and that the Lewis biography that I'm listening to, the author makes the point that the Inklings was a little bit like that for Lewis. It wasn't his most intimate level of friendship that he had.
Yeah.
Um, it was kind of, they just had a lot of fun and enjoyed talking about their shared interest in things. Um, and they probably weren't bearing their souls with each other every week.
You can only do so much of that, even with your closest friends.
True. Yep. Agreed.
So I find myself with my friends, like, we'll both do it. I've done it with Christian, and we both are often just hitting the same themes and with the same laments. Like it's very cyclical. And you
Yep.
listen, and I don't mind, and vice versa. But you're like, have we solved anything? Or are we just let's go take
Yeah.
a walk. Let's
Sometimes
go
you
look at some books. Let's go to Barnes and Noble.
right. Sometimes you've cried in the beer enough. You just need to take a break, drink the beer, and talk about the taste of the beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Exactly.
what kind of hops are in this beer?
Right.
No.
Is there anything else
Yeah,
you want to cover? Oh,
I
you
don't
were
think
gonna.
so. I think I had let's see, I had the randos. We talked about that. I think those are super important. Um, I think that's all I've got.
All right. How do we want to land the plane?
Hmm. I guess my closing thoughts would be this was fun to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I was really encouraged to think again about my relationship with Jesus, my friendship. We say my relationship with Jesus, but what does that mean? Putting
Yeah.
meat on those bones, practical things. And I think that friendship angle is good and helpful for me right now. Um, and I would just encourage everyone um, to take a moment, think about like if your good friend died unexpectedly, like how would you think about it tomorrow?
Hmm.
What do you appreciate about what they bring to your life? Um, and like they're a gift, they're a gift to you. So it's good to be thankful for that and take advantage of all those opportunities you have to be with them and to build that friendship. And I don't know. That's all I got.
Nice. Um, yeah, I agree. Don't chase the profile, chase your friend. Do that. Do more of that.
Yep.
So, well, if you guys liked this, like, comment, hit the subscribe button to the bell for notifications. This has been really fun, Risto. I hope to be able to do something like this again with you or the group as a whole. This was really cool, and it was nice to like have a conversation with you face to face, as
Yeah.
much as we can. This is the first time we did that outside of the estuary, so it was really neat.
Yeah. If I'm ever down in Florida, I'll have to swing by.
Yes, I gotta add you to the list of people in the corner I've met for cigars.
Yeah. So far, I'm trying to think of who I've met in person. I think just I'll definitely smoke cigars with you. Um,
Yes, there we go. That would be awesome.
so yeah,
I've done it with Matt C, and I've done it with Free Rillian,
very nice.
and that was pretty cool. So, all right. Well, like I said, if you guys enjoyed this, stick around for more stuff. I don't know, jump into the conversation and take it from here. So, with that, God bless, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.